The fluorescent lights hummed their monotonous tune. As Zuar B. Huda stepped into the elevator on that fateful morning of February 7, 2016, the aging director of Bangladesh Bank felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. As the elevator climbed to the 10th floor, each floor marking another step toward what would become one of the most devastating discoveries in banking history, his polished shoes clicked against the marble floor. As he strode through the corridors with purpose, his mind consumed by a seemingly mundane yet increasingly troubling problem, a stubborn printer that refused to cooperate. But this wasn't some ordinary office printer prone to paper jams and toner mishaps. This was a sophisticated state-of-the-art automated machine, the digital heartbeat of the bank's transaction monitoring system, connected directly to the bank's most sensitive software infrastructure. It was designed to be the unwavering sentinel of financial activity, churning out transaction reports with mechanical precision, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without fail. The printer's silence over the past 2 days had created an ominous void, like a missing heartbeat in an otherwise healthy body. After 48 hours of relentless troubleshooting, involving IT specialists, frustrated phone calls to technical support, and countless attempts to resurrect the dormant machine, the printer finally roared back to life. But what emerged from its mechanical depths was far more than anyone had bargained for, like a dam bursting after holding back floodwaters. An avalanche of backlogged reports began cascading from the machine in an endless stream, as Zuar watched the papers pile up with growing unease. A chill of recognition crept up his spine. Among the mountain of documentation lay instructions that would make his blood run cold. The New York Federal Reserve had received explicit commands to drain Bangladesh Bank's entire account, nearly $1 billion vanishing into the digital ether. Chaos erupted throughout the building like wildfire. Employees scattered in every direction, their voices rising in panic as they desperately attempted to halt transactions that had already sailed beyond their reach. Phone lines buzzed with frantic calls, keyboards clattered under trembling fingers, and the air grew thick with the suffocating realization that they were likely too late, in the span of a few devastating moments. Bangladesh had suffered one of the most catastrophic financial losses in modern history, a staggering $1 billion, stolen not through brute force or physical intimidation, but through the invisible, insidious power of digital manipulation. The attack had been brewing in the shadows for over a year, its origins tracing back to a seemingly innocent email that arrived like a wolf in sheep's clothing during the quiet evening hours of January 2015. The message appeared unremarkable, just another job application in the endless stream of professional correspondence, hidden within what appeared to be a standard zip file attachment. However, lay a digital Trojan horse crafted by some of the world's most sophisticated cybercriminals. One by one, unsuspecting Bangladesh Bank employees clicked on the attachment, each action serving as an unwitting invitation for the hackers to cross the threshold into the bank's digital domain. Like microscopic invaders infiltrating a living organism, the malware began its silent conquest, spreading through the network's arteries with methodical precision. This wasn't some crude, off-the-shelf virus cobbled together by amateur hackers. Instead, it was a masterpiece of malicious engineering, custom-built, elegantly designed, and devastatingly effective. The malware operated with the patience and cunning of a master spy, establishing encrypted communication channels that functioned like invisible tunnels beneath the bank's digital infrastructure. For months, it quietly mapped every corner of the network, learning the intricate pathways of information flow, identifying security vulnerabilities, and documenting the daily routines of legitimate employees. The hackers, operating from their remote command centers, watched and learned like predators studying their prey, gradually piecing together the complex puzzle of how money moved through the international banking system. What they discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. The bank relied heavily on SWIFT, the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. This wasn't just any messaging system. It was the nervous system of global finance, a secure communication network that connected banks and financial institutions across the world like an intricate web of trust and verification. SWIFT represented the pinnacle of financial security technology, a digital fortress constructed with the most advanced security protocols money could buy. It was the kind of system that central banks worldwide trusted implicitly, believing it to be as impenetrable as the gold vaults it helped protect. Yet, like ancient Troy falling to the cunning of the wooden horse, even this seemingly invincible system had its vulnerabilities, and the hackers had found the key. The question that puzzled investigators for months was deceptively simple. Why Bangladesh? Among all the banks in the world, why had these sophisticated criminals chosen to focus their considerable talents and resources on this particular institution? The answer, when it finally emerged, revealed a calculated brilliance that was both admirable and terrifying in its cold logic. Bangladesh in 2016 represented a perfect storm of opportunity and vulnerability. The country was experiencing an unprecedented period of economic growth, its GDP climbing steadily as it emerged from decades of underdevelopment. New businesses were flourishing, international trade was expanding, and foreign investment was pouring in like never before. Yet beneath this veneer of progress lay a critical weakness. The cybersecurity infrastructure hadn't evolved at the same pace as the economic expansion. While Bangladesh Bank controlled access to billions of dollars stored safely in the vaults of the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank in New York, its own digital defenses remained relatively primitive compared to those of more established financial centers. The bank was rich enough to make the elaborate heist worthwhile, yet vulnerable enough to be penetrated by determined adversaries. It was, in the eyes of the hackers, the perfect victim, a golden opportunity wrapped in digital vulnerability. As the hackers established their foothold within the bank's network, they faced a trio of seemingly insurmountable challenges that would have deterred less ambitious criminals. Each obstacle required innovative solutions that pushed the boundaries of digital deception to new heights. The first challenge was perhaps the most mundane yet critical: the automated printer that served as the bank's paper trail guardian. This mechanical witness faithfully recorded every SWIFT transaction, creating a permanent physical record that employees reviewed daily. Any unusual activity would be immediately visible, making stealth nearly impossible. The second hurdle involved the delicate art of impersonation on a scale that boggled the mind. The hackers needed to flawlessly mimic Bangladesh Bank's digital credentials within the SWIFT system, creating fraudulent transfer requests so convincing that even the skeptical eyes of New York Federal Reserve officials would approve them without question. The third and perhaps most daunting challenge was the sheer logistics of the theft itself. While Bangladesh Bank served as the perfect entry point, the real prize lay thousands of miles away in the heavily guarded vaults of the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank in New York. The hackers needed to use Bangladesh Bank as an elaborate digital puppet, manipulating it to authorize the transfer of vast sums that it didn't actually possess. But the hackers' brilliance shone through in their solution to the printer problem. Rather than attempting to destroy or disable the device, actions that would have immediately aroused suspicion, they crafted an ingenious piece of malware designed to deceive rather than destroy. On the day of the heist, this digital mirage would cause the printer to simply stop functioning, creating the illusion of a routine technical malfunction while hiding the evidence of their massive theft behind the facade of broken office equipment. With military-like precision, the hackers began establishing their financial infrastructure across multiple continents. In May 2015, they opened 4 accounts at the RCBC Bank on Jupiter Street in Manila, Philippines, each one seeded with a modest $500 deposit, amount so small they wouldn't trigger any automated surveillance systems. These accounts were like empty vessels waiting to receive an ocean of stolen wealth. A 5th account was established in Sri Lanka as a strategic backup, while additional accounts were scattered around the globe like hidden caches. each one ready to receive millions of dollars at a moment's notice. The stage was set for what would become the most audacious bank robbery in history, a heist that would unfold not in the shadows of a back alley, but in the bright light of international banking systems, hidden in plain sight. Thursday night, February 4th, 2016, marked the beginning of the hackers' masterpiece, as the last Bangladesh bank employees locked their offices and headed home for what they assumed would be a routine weekend. The criminals began executing a plan that had been over a year in the making. But what transformed this from merely ambitious to absolutely brilliant was their exploitation of something most people take for granted: time zones. The beauty of their timing was almost poetic in its elegance. In Bangladesh, the weekend begins on Thursday night, meaning the bank would remain empty and unmonitored until Sunday morning, a crucial window of nearly 3 full days. Meanwhile, in New York, Friday morning was just beginning at 9:36 a.m., giving Federal Reserve employees an entire business day to process and execute what they believed to be legitimate transfer requests from their Bangladeshi counterpart. Adding another layer to their temporal advantage, the upcoming Monday, February 8th, was Chinese New Year, a bank holiday throughout the Philippines that would effectively extend their window of opportunity even further. The hackers had engineered a situation where they could exploit 3 different time zones across 4 continuous days, creating a perfect storm of opportunity that might never occur again. As darkness settled over Dhaka and the city fell into its weekend slumber, the hackers initiated their digital assault with the cold precision of seasoned professionals, logging into the compromised SWIFT terminals. They began issuing transfer commands with the authority of Bangladesh Bank itself, each transaction representing months of careful planning and reconnaissance. On Friday morning in New York, Federal Reserve employees arrived at their desks to find an unusual influx of SWIFT transaction requests from Bangladesh. The requests appeared routine, the digital signatures were perfect, the authorizations looked legitimate, and the formatting followed all established protocols. One by one, transactions totaling $951 million began flowing from the Federal Reserve's vaults to accounts scattered across Asia. By the time the last command was entered, the hackers had requested transfers to 35 different accounts around the world. Their work complete, they logged out of the Bangladesh Bank SWIFT network and activated their malware's final protocol, a digital self-destruct sequence that began systematically erasing evidence of their presence, wiping clean the electronic footprints that might lead investigators back to them. Sunday morning brought Zuar back to his familiar office routine, beginning his workday with the customary check of the transaction printer. The empty tray that greeted him seemed like nothing more than another mundane technical glitch, the kind of minor irritation that plagues offices everywhere. After all, printers fail with predictable regularity, and this one had been acting up all week. But as the morning progressed, what began as mild inconvenience evolved into mounting concern, then escalated into full-blown panic. Bangladesh Bank employees found themselves locked out of their own SWIFT terminal, encountering cryptic error messages that blocked their access to the very systems they needed to conduct business. Among the few messages that did get through were 3 communications from the New York Federal Reserve that would change everything. Inquiries about nearly $1 billion worth of payment, requests that no one at Bangladesh Bank remembered authorizing. Zuar's world tilted on its axis as the full scope of the disaster became clear. His frantic attempts to reach Federal Reserve officials were met with silence. It was Saturday in New York, and his desperate calls echoed unanswered through empty offices. With each passing hour, the magnitude of the theft became more apparent, and the window for recovery grew smaller. In desperation, Bangladesh Bank employees made the fateful decision to shut down their servers entirely and began reaching out to intermediary banks around the world, hoping against hope that the stolen funds could somehow be recovered. The international banking system's complexity, usually a source of security and redundancy, now worked against them. Money doesn't simply jump from the Federal Reserve directly to accounts in Asia. It flows through a complex network of intermediary banks, each one representing another link in the chain, another potential point of intervention or confusion. Phone calls flooded international banking centers as Bangladesh bank employees frantically tried to trace their missing $1 billion. The calls painted a picture of desperation and confusion, with bank officials struggling to explain how nearly $1 billion had simply vanished into the digital ether. But fate, it seemed, had not entirely abandoned Bangladesh Bank. In what can only be described as divine intervention or extraordinary luck, the automated fraud detection systems at the Federal Reserve flagged 30 of the transactions for manual review. The trigger was almost comically mundane. One of the transaction descriptions contained a word that matched the name of an Iranian shipping vessel that had been blacklisted for evading U.S. sanctions. This coincidental match proved to be the hackers' first significant setback. Human eyes reviewing the flagged transactions immediately spotted numerous red flags: the staggering total amount, the suspicious number of payment instructions, and the unusual pattern of large transfers to private entities rather than established financial institutions, like dominoes falling in reverse. $870 million worth of transfer requests were frozen pending further investigation. But 5 transactions had already slipped through the net. One $20 million transfer to Sri Lanka began its journey through a German intermediary bank, only to be halted by another stroke of fortune, a simple spelling error. The transfer request had misspelled Shalika Foundation as Shalika Foundation, missing a single letter. This tiny mistake triggered immediate human scrutiny, and the transaction was reversed, sending the money back to Bangladesh Bank's New York account. In the end, only 4 transactions succeeded in reaching their destinations, carrying a total of $81 million to the hackers' carefully prepared RCBC bank accounts in the Philippines. The timing had worked perfectly. The transfers were completed during Chinese New Year when RCBC Bank was closed, preventing any last-minute intervention from Bangladesh bank officials. But having the money in their accounts was only half the battle. The hackers now faced the challenge of actually accessing and laundering their digital fortune. The investigation revealed that $30 million of the stolen funds had been transferred to a Chinese national who subsequently vanished without a trace, taking his share of the stolen billions with him. Whether he was the mastermind behind the operation or simply a well-compensated accomplice remains one of the enduring mysteries of the case. Despite international law enforcement efforts, no trace of this individual or his money has ever been found. The remaining $51 million required a more elaborate laundering scheme. The hackers chose to exploit the Philippines' relatively lax anti-money laundering regulations by channeling their stolen funds through 2 of Manila's most prestigious casinos, the Midas Casino and the Soler Casino, with $30 million flowing to Soler and $20 million to Midas. The process wasn't as simple as walking in with suitcases full of cash. Instead, the hackers linked their bank accounts directly to the casino's systems, transferring the stolen funds electronically. Once the money was within the casino ecosystem, they requested private gambling rooms, exclusive junkets where high-rolling players could operate without unwanted attention or interruption. Settling into these luxurious private quarters, the hackers began playing Baccarat, a game known for its relatively favorable odds that typically return about 90% of money wagered over time. This wasn't about winning or losing, it was about transformation. They were converting stolen digital currency into legitimate casino chips, then back into clean cash that couldn't be traced to the original theft. For hours, they sat in these opulent rooms, methodically playing hand after hand while law enforcement agencies across multiple continents desperately searched for their missing $81 million. When they finally cashed out, they walked away from the casinos with briefcases full of laundered money, boarded flights to Macau, and disappeared into the administrative complexity of Chinese territory, where international law enforcement efforts effectively ended. Despite their meticulous efforts to erase all evidence of their digital infiltration, the hackers couldn't completely cover their tracks. Cybersecurity experts analyzing the malware discovered familiar signatures, coding techniques, attack patterns, and digital fingerprints that matched other high-profile cyber attacks around the world. All roads led to a single, chilling conclusion: North Korea. Security researchers identified the perpetrators as the Lazarus Group, a state-sponsored hacking collective operating under the direct authority of the North Korean government. This revelation transformed the Bangladesh bank heist from a criminal enterprise into something far more significant: an act of state-sponsored economic warfare. The timing made perfect geopolitical sense. In 2013, international sanctions had severely restricted North Korea's ability to conduct bulk money transfers, a direct response to the country's unsanctioned missile tests. Cut off from traditional international finance, North Korea had apparently turned to cybercrime as an alternative revenue stream. The timeline was damning. Sanctions imposed in 2013, followed by the beginning of the Bangladesh bank infiltration in 2015. According to FBI estimates, the Bangladesh bank heist was just one operation in a much larger campaign. The Lazarus Group had been systematically targeting banks around the world, attempting to steal approximately $1.2 billion across multiple institutions, while they had only successfully obtained $122 million total. Their $81 million theft from Bangladesh Bank represented one of the largest bank robberies in recorded history. The heist revealed the terrifying vulnerability of the international financial system to sophisticated state actors willing to invest time, resources, and expertise in long-term digital infiltration campaigns. It demonstrated that in the modern world, the greatest bank robberies would be conducted not by masked gunmen, but by invisible hackers operating from thousands of miles away, stealing billions of dollars without ever setting foot in the institutions they robbed. The Bangladesh bank heist stands as a watershed moment in the history of cybercrime, a perfect storm of technical sophistication, geopolitical motivation, and systemic vulnerability that resulted in one of the most audacious thefts ever recorded. It forever changed how financial institutions think about security, proving that in the digital age, the most dangerous threats come not from the streets, but from the shadows of cyberspace.